Welcome to my channel if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, which I highly doubt that it is. So welcome back if it is not. Today is just going to be a catch up. I'm going to have a little bit of a chin wag to camera and catch anyone who is interested up on where I have been, what I've been up to the last 4 to 6 weeks, and what I've been reading. Today, as I film this video, it's been exactly 1 month since I last uploaded to the channel, and even that video was, I pulled some footage from my reading vlog to upload a cozy, comforting, hopefully, a video. I have filmed 3 videos in the month that I haven't been uploading. I filmed a write with me because I love the idea of filming cozy, comforting videos. That is something that I watched a whole lot of when I was away at university. So I filmed a write with me. I filmed an unboxing because my Cosmere RPG arrived. And I also filmed a book tag that Bookish Chaz tagged me in. And I'm having such a nightmare trying to export that video. I have individually, not all at the same time, but I have lost the audio to that video, I have lost the visuals, and now the audio and the video is out of sync and the video is in like slow motion. I think I just have to scrap all of that footage and refilm that tag video, which pains me quite a bit, but at this point I have sunk so many hours into trying to get that video up, and I just have to accept defeat and start again, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So I have been filming, or at least trying to film, but life has just been very busy with family. It has been happy and it has been sad, just the spectrum of life, right? And I also, my reading slowed down a lot in the last month. I wouldn't necessarily say that I am in a reading slump, but my reading habits have definitely shifted, and like I said, they've definitely slowed down quite a bit. I have been reading a lot of, not necessarily darker, but more graphic, more serious, more, a little bit darker maybe, just more serious books, and those have taken me a lot longer to get through than my happy-go-lucky romances that I usually reach to for comfort. I think I need to pick up a happy-go-lucky romance or two soon, just to kind of break up the graphic, more serious tone of some of the books I've been reading as of late. I have been enjoying what I've read lately. I don't think I've gotten a 5-star read, or I don't think I have read a 5-star read in the last few months. So that has also impacted the way my reading has slowed down. I find if I'm reading at least 1 5-star book a month, that keeps me motivated and that keeps me just chewing through books as fast as possible. But lately I've read a lot of strong 4-star books, but there's not been one, or no, that's a lie. I did read one 5-star book at the start of August, which I will get to at the end of this video. But yes, my summer TBR is a little bit of a joke at this point because I have read 5 out of the 16 books that I had hoped to read before the end of September, and I'm not going to get anywhere near to half of that list finished. And that's okay. They're MBRs for a reason, might be read. I love that shift in mindset, and I just need to remind myself about that shift, that this isn't a hard and fast rule, and there is no punishment, there is no failing grade that comes with not completing or finishing an MBR or even a TBR. An intersection of the family time that I've been having, as well as an indulgence on my bookish habits, is that I went over to Prince Edward Island with my grandmother at the end of August, and we stayed right downtown. I had the most beautiful, loveliest time with my Grammy, who I absolutely adore. And our hotel was located right next to some gorgeous bookshops. There was one that I didn't get to go into just because of timing, but I did spend probably a couple hours in total within two of them, and one was more polished, I would say, and they had newer material, and then the other one that I stayed right until closing and past closing even was definitely like this cozy, comforting secondhand bookshop with, it was just a treasure trove. It was my ideal secondhand bookstore, and the first one, the Bookman, I would say is my ideal newer bookstore, even though it did, I think, have just secondhand books. It was much more highbrow, I would say, and I loved it with its towering bookcases. It reminded me a lot of the Abbey in Paris, which is probably my favorite bookstore in the world. But the second bookstore I went into was stunning and gorgeous. Like I said, I stayed past closing. The proprietor was this older gentleman named Lawrence. And as he started hauling in all the books and materials from outside, he reassured me. He's like, take as long as you want. I still need to do like the books and close everything out. Like, there is no rush. I just need to get this in. It was buy 3 books, get the 4th free, and I was looking for that elusive 4th book. I ended up grabbing a romance, so maybe I'll reach for that sooner rather than later to see if that can kind of break up the darker reads I've been consuming as of late. So I did end up buying a handful of books that I will be filming a little book haul soon, which will actually be my first book haul of 2025. I have been trying so hard not to buy more books before I finish all of the unread ones on my shelf, and I've bought one here or there throughout the year, but I've not bought like 6 books at once, which is what I did on the island, at any point this year. So it was a bit of an indulgence. I was on vacation, and now I'll look at those lovely books and remember the lovelier time that I had with my Grammys. So I don't have to justify my book spending, but I was very conscious and aware of what I was picking up. So that is what I have been up to during the last couple of months or so. And amidst all of that family time, my reading has definitely slowed, like I have said, but I've still read some really enjoyable, good books. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to talk about the best books that I've read over the last couple of months or so. So this is going to be kind of my stand-in for my best books of Q3, my reading wrap-up for July and August and the first half of September. And then the only remaining reading update for the year will be my whiskeys, which will be a reflection back on the full year. So the first book I'm going to talk about is one that I read at the end of July, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett. I really enjoyed this book. It's a fantasy romance, but the romance is very, very light. It's very closed door. I wouldn't really label this as a fantasy romance. It's magical realism. I can see some faint wisps of Susanna Clarke within this book with the way that she depicts fairies and the realm of fairies. It feels very traditional, pulling on those old folk tales and old fairy tales, which is what Susanna Clarke does. It also reminded me a lot of A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan, in the sense that our main character is an academic and is recording her observations for academic purposes. I did really enjoy our main character. She's a little bit of a curmudgeon. She's kind of standoffish. She doesn't understand social norms, but she was still so endearing, and I really understood her and connected with her. I didn't find her off-putting at all. So I was able to immediately connect with our character, which was important for my reading of this book because it took me a little bit longer to orient myself within Fawcett's world. It is magical realism. It is an alternate reality, an alternate universe in which, yes, we have Oxford in England, but our main character is traveling to a fictional country that bears resemblance to perhaps Iceland, perhaps the northern reaches of, say, Denmark, something like that. It's an Arctic country, and fairies are very prevalent, and the Fae are very prevalent. So it took me a little bit longer to orient myself within the world. Therefore, I was very much grateful for the fact that I connected with our main character quickly. It did take me a little bit longer to connect with our male main character, but I did grow to care for him as well, which I wasn't entirely certain I was going to do when I started out reading this book. This is the beginning of a series. I believe there are 3 books out. Yes, there are 3 books out in this series. I definitely want to pick up the sequel and the 3rd installment. I think I gave this book 4 stars because the world took me a little bit longer to get into. It's also epistolary, but then you're reading her personal journal, even though there is the sense that she is only writing this for academic purposes. It does feel very much like a diary. So there was a little bit of disconnect and a little bit of I couldn't fully suspend my disbelief in that sense, but I still very much enjoyed this book. I still gave it 4 stars, and I will still return to this world, hopefully before the end of the year. The next book that I picked up and really enjoyed was Blood Song by Anthony Ryan. But this book did take me a very long time to get into, longer than Emily Wilde's, because I didn't immediately connect with the character or the world. I would say it wasn't until 2/3 of the way into this book that I finally connected to what was taking place, and finally the blood song part of the title became apparent and I understood where the story was going. Because we meet our main character Valen when he's quite young. He is, I think, 12 years old, and he enters into this school of warriors. They're training all of these young boys to be warriors. And we meet him, he meets these kids around him, they form a close-knit friendship group, and we're following them as they go through years of schooling. There's a lot of time jumps, and also this core of kids aren't very likable at first. So the concept wasn't revolutionary. This book did come out, I think, 20 years ago. So that's not surprising in and of itself. But I wasn't connecting to the characters or the world, and I wasn't understanding why I was supposed to care for these characters until finally enough of them, enough of their quirks and habits and nature was established by about that halfway mark that I started to really become invested. And I am someone where if there are a lot of time jumps in a story, it does pull me away from the storyline. It's not something that I resonate with. It's kind of a little bit grating. It can disconnect me from the storyline. I understand conceptually why Ryan used that method in his storytelling, just because I can see in hindsight why it was so important for us to meet Valen at that young age and watch him grow up essentially throughout the years in this warrior school, and as he formed these bonds with the boys and then young men around him. So I really grew to care for him, but it was a slow burn. I did give this book 4.5 stars because the ending was very strong. I very much enjoyed the ending to this book, and I absolutely need/want to pick up the sequel soon to figure out where this story is going and how Ryan is planning on concluding it in the 3rd installment. I didn't enjoy this book at the very beginning, but I very much enjoyed it by the end. So it did lose that half-star mark just because the story felt a little bit disconnected to me for the majority of the book, but this was also Ryan's debut, I believe. And when you look at it through the lens of it being a debut, it makes a whole lot more sense. And if this had been like an author 20 years into their career, I probably would have given it a lower rating than 4.5. But for a debut, for what it's trying to establish, I think Ryan did a very good job, and I did really enjoy it. Shifting gears entirely from Bloodsong, the next book that I read and really enjoyed is actually a little novella, and that is A Lantern Left Burning by Thea Hawthorne. And I actually received an ARC copy of this book in exchange for sharing my thoughts, and I did share a post over on Instagram, and I have a full review up on my StoryGraph and on my Goodreads. But I very much enjoyed this cozy, comforting little story. I love the way that Hawthorne writes, and I love the description that she carries throughout this little novella. I very much enjoyed my time in Ask. This is the first story, the first bit of writing I have read from Hawthorne, so I was unfamiliar with her world of Esk. I really want to pick up her other novellas, and I know she has another title coming out, I think in 2026, that I'd like to read as well, because I enjoyed how much of the world became apparent through this little novella. I find that is often what falls short in novellas for me. There's not enough complexity and there's not enough world building that I don't really connect, and it just doesn't feel fully fleshed out. That wasn't the case with A Lantern Left Burning. I love the way she was able to articulate the social dynamics as well as just the climate and the atmosphere and the way that this city is structured and how that is telling of the ruling class. I really, really enjoyed it. The one thing that held this story back from a 5th star for me, I would say, is our main character is someone who is suffering from burnout and is someone who has really low self-esteem, that doesn't think they are worthy of rest. They think they are only equal to the output that they are doing, which is something that just breaks my heart because everyone is worthy of rest. And I prefer when a character comes to realize their self-worth, not necessarily entirely for themselves, because I think you do have to have a very supportive network around you to come to that big realization. But I don't like when a person or a character articulates that their self-worth is because of someone else. And that was a little bit the case in this book. Our character realizes she is worthy of rest because of the love interest. And I will say hate, because I really, really don't like it when a character realizes their self-worth, but it's dependent on another person. Because what happens if that relationship doesn't last? What happens then? And also, what does that mean for the characters who existed in that character's life beforehand, her friends who were trying to get her to take rest, to take care of herself, and she didn't listen to them, but now that she is romantically interested in another person, she will, because she has that person to take rest for. So maybe I'm overreading this. Maybe I'm overthinking this. I will absolutely accept that conclusion. But for me, there was just something about the very concluding pages of A Lantern Left Burning that made me feel as if Lilia's self-worth journey wasn't fully complete, which is valid. I mean, is anyone's journey fully complete? but it felt very much like she was hinging her self-worth on another person, and I really wanted, for her sake and for her friend's sake, and I think even Iris, the love interest, would want that for Linnea, for her to have that entirely of her own volition, and to have internalized the message that was woven throughout A Lantern Left Burning. And yeah, there was just a little bit of disconnect. The fourth book that I'm going to talk about is one that I read in the midst of August as well. And this is that 5-star book I was speaking about earlier. And that is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. And Chaz, I think, will be very happy to hear that I have finally read The Tainted Cup. I might do a full review video on this book. So I'm not going to share all of my thoughts and feelings right now. I also don't want this video to be an hour long, but I did give The Tainted Cup 5 stars. I loved it. It was so good. This was another one that it took me a while to acclimatize to the world. It started with a bang. It was a very graphic introduction, and I'm someone who mostly reads before bed, and I also have very vivid dreams. So I had to stop and start the first chapter or so of this book a few times and then read it in daylight hours. Not that it's horror or anything like that, but it is very graphically describing blood and a corpse. So be forewarned, because I went into this book, I really didn't want to know too much about it. I knew it was a mystery, and I knew it had slightly Watson and Holmes vibes, but I knew very little about the characters, about the world, about the setting. I adored our Holmes character, whose name is Anna, and I really enjoyed our Watson character too, and learning more about him and his dynamics and his interactions. Overall, I just loved the introduction to this world, but I would say it wasn't a full third into the book before I started to really care, but it was probably about a quarter before I was hooked into the storyline and needed to see it through to the end. It's very different from a lot of what I have been reading or I have read recently, but that is a good thing, and I very much enjoyed that. So I will be picking up the sequel hopefully soon, and hopefully I'll be filming a full review video about my thoughts for The Tainted Cup. But yes, I really enjoyed it. It might place within the Whiskies. I think it is absolutely deserving of a nomination, and we will see if it wins any of my categories. The next book that I really enjoyed is another one that's a little bit different from what I have currently been reading, and that is because it's nonfiction. And I have not read very much nonfiction this year at all, but I really enjoyed Creativity, Inc. Overcoming the Unseen Forces That Stand in the Way of True Inspiration by Ed Catmull. And Ed Catmull is the founder of Pixar. He worked very closely with Steve Jobs to get Pixar off the ground, and then he was at the forefront of leading Disney Animation and Pixar after that animation. He brought Toy Story to screen and the subsequent sequels. And it was just so interesting to listen to him talk back on his career and what led him to computer animation. I am not someone who is technologically inclined at all, but I think if you have ever been a manager, Catmull's take on managing people was really interesting to me, as was his insights into the world of production. I worked last year on a TV show, so I have a little bit of insight now into working on one TV set, and there were certain things that he shared that immediately brought me back to working in production and just reflecting on, like, oh man, that would be an absolute nightmare when he's talking through all of these moments of turmoil that took place. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I do find reading nonfiction to be a little bit difficult just because I don't mean to give someone's life a low star rating, but I listened to the audiobook of Creativity Inc. and I found it to be a really enjoyable read, and it was really refreshing to go into a nonfiction book after not having read nonfiction very much this year at all. So those are the books that I have read recently and enjoyed. I am currently reading The Last Light of the Sun by Gavriel. I started reading this on the island and I'm still only about 2/3 of the way through. This is another more serious book, a little bit sadder, more bleak, a little bit darker with some gory descriptions throughout. So I've just been making my way through it quite slowly. I haven't fully connected with any of our characters. I would say there are two that I care about, but I don't think I would be emotionally devastated if they don't make it through to the end. And I do think that there's a very real possibility that there will be some major character deaths within The Last Light of the Sun. This book is taking place during an era of history that is quite reminiscent of our own, when there was that intersection of Anglo-Saxon and Celtic and Vikings all vying for land and for power, and we are watching our characters struggle through that power, that play for power, as well as just trying to find their own place in life with the difficulties that come with the legacy of your parents. So yes, it's a little bit more bleak of a novel, therefore I've been reading it a little bit slower, which has been kind of the theme of this video. I am enjoying it though, and I will likely finish this before the end of the month, but for now, that is going to be it for me. Let me know down in a comment below what you are currently reading or what you have read recently and really enjoyed, because I'd love to hear about it. But for now, this is going to be it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will be back soon, hopefully. Bye for now.